Welcome in to another episode of Major League Journeymen. Just to introduce my esteemed colleagues here, I want to throw it to the birthday boy, Alan Gordon, recipient of a new hip. Are you feeling any younger, Gordo? Or are we feeling older? Where are we at on this special occasion?
That makes me feel good, Gargs. I didn't know you would remember my birthday. Thanks, buddy.
Come on,
I'm feeling
dude.
good, man. New hip. I'm cruising around. I'm looking forward to the next 30 years of my life. I'll tell you that much.
30 years of your life. What are we going to have in store for us? What can we plan on to see from Alan E. Gordon?
With the new hip, probably maybe a TST cameo. Only if Dax retires and comes onto the Sneaky Fox crew. Guards, you're on the wait list still to see if Dax is going to retire, but we'll figure that one out.
I did get an email just to reconfirm my interest in the waiting list. So yeah, I'm good. McGee touched base.
No, we know you're there. We know you're there. You stay right there. We'll get a hold of you.
Right there, right on the cusp,
right
from the 12th
there.
man.
You're right at the top, pal.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Gordo. I appreciate that. And, you know, to my left, Mr. Dax McCarty, the delivery boy, an absolute banger against New England. Dax, so most of us have been there in terms of hitting that shot, whether that's been in practice for me and games for the two of you. When it left your foot, was it an instant, oh shit, that might be high, or was it an, oh shit, that's in the back of the net?
It was, oh, I hit this pretty good, but I think it's going to hit off the crossbar and bounce out. You know, it was one of those. I hit it good, I hit it clean, but you know, when you don't hit it purely with the laces, it was a little bit on the outside of the foot, and it just felt like it was rising a little too quickly. But once it hit the underside of the crossbar, I had a good vibe. I saw it hit the top of the net, and I was like, I don't care if it bounces out. It hit a little bit of the net. It's got to be a goal.
Got to be a goal.
Dax, and I didn't know it was Gordo's birthday, but like, you're welcome, Gordo. That was your birthday present. I'm not sending you anything else.
I appreciate that, but tell the listeners what I texted you.
Oh. Did you put
Do you
this?
not remember?
I don't remember. Did you put this?
Okay.
I got a lot of texts. I got a lot of texts. I haven't scored a goal in 4 years. I got a lot of texts.
My God.
All right?
Dude,
All right.
you can tell Gordo is getting old. He's quoting himself now. So Gordo,
was this in the group chat?
Let me tell the listeners so we don't have to do all this stuff. Okay?
Please.
I know where you're going with this. I can't wait.
So for the listeners, Dax McCarty likes to do one thing and one thing only at the end of practice. Okay, almost every single practice, he really fancies himself at a goalie side volley.
Yeah,
just liner. He loves
does.
doing it, and I gotta say he's got skills. So he'll pick, whatever goalie likes to do it. He'll pick the goalie out and he'll show off and he'll hit a couple sidewinders, and it was perfect.
It was
show off for the young guys.
And I texted him. I said, Dax, I am so glad that 17 years of hitting side volleys at the end of practice has finally paid off, because
I know what they say, right?
I do remember that
Success
now.
is when preparation meets opportunity. So 17 years of building, there's the opportunity.
I'm telling you what.
I mean, let's talk about the opportunity though. How does that not get smashed into the back of the net from your boy up front?
Surge, he knew that I hadn't scored in 4 years, and even though he needed to
get an assist, did he call bank?
I wish he got an assist for that, but he did score an identical header right after that, like a couple minutes after my goal, but only from the opposite side of the field. So Jacob Schaffelberg got the assist and not Randall Leao. But I will say, Gordo, it's so funny that you bring up that text, because just today in training, it was in the middle of training, and I just had that feeling overcome me about I need to hit a few sidewinders. I haven't hit a few in a couple days. And me and Joe Willis were just going back and forth, ping, ping, ping. And honestly, I didn't have it dialed in like I usually do. I was kind of all over the shop. And I just thought, you know what? I'll just save the good ones for the game.
That's right.
Well played. Jacob Schaffelberg, the Tennessee water slide, is that what his nickname is?
It is.
That's pretty good.
It is
Whoever
really good.
came up with that needs a +1 in their marketing budget. That's they nailed that one.
He's got the best mullet in Nashville right now, I got to say.
Yeah, the Tennessee water slide. Well, Mullets in Nashville, I didn't see any of those on the field in Hartford, Connecticut. One, I thought that it was kind of odd, just the location of the game for that to be the venue. Not that it wasn't stuffed and not that they didn't sell it out, because it clearly was. It looked like a great environment, great crowd into it, but just thought it was pretty random to be there. I would think U.S. Soccer v. Germany can fill out just about any stadium in this country, and to go there to sell it in the middle of October, I thought was kind of odd. Did you guys have any thoughts on that? I mean, Gordo, I know that we checked in during the game. It was also one of those things where I thought the publication of it wasn't really well placed. Like it didn't seem like it was a big to-do until maybe like 3 hours before the game, and you're playing against arguably one of the most iconic brands in the world, U.S. Germany. Were you tuned in, Gordo?
You know, I didn't. I was coaching guys. I mean, I would have loved to watch it, and you guys were talking. So I'm gonna let you guys go for it. I've seen the highlights, and you know, I can chime in on what I saw from highlights. You can only get so much. So I mean, yeah. I'll let Dax and you kind of rap about it, but. Because
Dax, you watched it, right?
I did. I you know how it is when you're trying to watch games with kids running around. I did try to watch most of it. I missed, a couple minutes here and there. I do agree with you, Gargs. It was a little random. I know the U.S. They've played a couple friendlies up there. I actually had like a little connection to that field and that stadium because back in the day during COVID, I don't know if it was 2020 or 2021. I can't really remember which year it was, but we actually had to play Toronto FC up there because they were staying in the U.S. I think it was 2020. I can't, but they were staying in the U.S. They couldn't go back up to Canada, so they actually had to host their home playoff game at that stadium.
And so I actually watched that game. I remember
we ended up winning the game, and that actually ended up being, I think, the last game that Greg Vanney coached for Toronto. I think he went to L.A. right after that. So it's a little bit of a random location, but I have to say the stadium is pretty cool, and the field is good. The pitch is in good condition. I don't really know why they chose to play there, but I will say the crowd was great. It seemed like a pretty lively environment. The pitch looked good. From a game perspective, I thought the U.S. was really good in the first half. It was a pretty open game. It was pretty back and forth, and I thought after Pulisic scored an absolute banger, which was a fantastic goal. Side note, you can see his move to AC Milan paying off. I mean, he just looks really, really sharp, really fresh, really confident.
Yep.
And you can tell that he's matured a lot, and I think he's really embracing the mantra of like, okay, like I am the alpha dog, I am the best player on the U.S. men's national team now. This is my team, and so I think he's good for those moments of magic in almost every game he plays. Now, whether or not he scores, that's a different story. But he was the most dangerous player on the field in the first half. Should have had another goal, but decided to try to round the keeper, and he kind of gave it a little dive, went down. Was looking for the penalty, didn't get it.
That was a dive.
It was a dive. It was a dive, no question. But first half, I thought the U.S. looked good. Second half was a totally different story. I thought Germany completely outclassed us. I thought they used the ball in possession just a lot better than we did. And you could tell that the connections on the back line, they weren't really great, right? You have Tim Ream, Chris Richards.
Who's number 4?
Tim Ream plays almost every minute for Fulham. Chris Richards, he doesn't play that much for Crystal Palace. He looked a little bit rusty. Their communication wasn't great. You had Joe
Scally
Joe Scally and Dest, but Dest on the left, Joe Scally on the right. Jedi Robinson has been fantastic for the U.S. at left back. You could just tell that that Germany was attacking down Dest's side, right, with Sané, and Sané was really dangerous.
Dude, so that matchup for me, I want to comment on that because I'd like your perspective on this. That looked to me like a high-profile 1v1 matchup the whole game. I've given Dest probably maybe a little bit too much critical, in terms of maybe I was a little bit too harsh on him as a defender. I've become a really big fan of Dest over the last maybe 2 years. And when he first came in, I thought he was brash. He was maybe a bit too young, maybe a bit too eager to get forward at all times, and I didn't really think that there was enough bite on the defensive side of the ball.
Yep.
But I've been really impressed with his maturation process, and I would say that for me in that game, that was one of the most entertaining, probably the most entertaining matchup, but the most entertaining bit of that game as a whole was seeing Sané go at him over and over and over again, and him, in a lot of ways, stand him up.
He did hold up okay. I thought that he got the best of Sane on a few occasions, and it was actually good to see a performance like that from Dest because he will be tested. Whenever he's playing on the right or the left, people have criticized him for his defensive frailties since he came to the national team, but I do think he has improved a little bit in that regard. I think he's a little bit more switched on and tuned in when he does have to play and defend 1v1. What I'll say is, in regards to the second half, in regards to when the game opened up a little bit, look, I think the U.S. has a lot of really good individually talented players, right? I mean, Gio Reyna only played a half, but you can tell that, he's a little bit rusty coming back from injury. He isn't playing big minutes right now with Dortmund, so I think a big storyline for him is where can he go? Is he not going to get the minutes that he needs at Dortmund to continue to flourish and continue to develop? He needs to go somewhere else.
They love him there.
Do they? I mean,
yeah. They've come out on a number of occasions. I think he's always injured. He's
here's my point, Dan. They've played now. I'm not sure. Let's call it 15 games to start the season now with Champions League, Bundesliga, and maybe Cup action. And Gio Reyna's played maybe 90 minutes total. I'm not sure. I mean, he hasn't played that much. And they have, you know how Dortmund is. They have a ton of young players coming through their system, constantly battling him out with competition, and it just doesn't seem like he's got a lot of trust from the coach. So I don't know what that situation is, but I think Gio Reyna needs minutes, and he needs games because you can tell that he has something different that the U.S. doesn't have in their midfield, okay? And so I thought he was pretty good. But what I wanted to touch on was Jamal Musiala for Germany. In my opinion, other than Jude Bellingham, I looked up how old this guy is. He's 20 years old. He is, in my opinion, quite easily one of the best young players in the world, if not the best young player in the world. He was fantastic. You can play him anywhere in the front four. He's so fun to watch. He's so slippery and technical with the ball at his feet. And he was just creating chance after chance in the second half for Germany. And he was the difference. He was the difference in the game for me when Germany really started to pile on the pressure. He was just finding spots all over the midfield. And you could tell Yunus Musa, Weston McKennie, that's where when you play a top team like this, you miss a Tyler Adams. That's just, I don't care what anyone says about Tyler's deficiencies, maybe with the ball and build-up. When you play top teams like this, if you don't have a number 6 who's dedicated to winning the ball back and making sure you eliminate the area in front of your center backs as a creative hub for the opponent, you're going to have problems. And for as good as Yunus Musa is, and for as great of a player as I think he's going to be, I just don't think he's a natural 6. I think he's a natural 6. You can play him in CONCACAF with no issues because you're going to dominate the ball. When you play a better team, you need a destroyer in there, in my opinion. So I thought that was the difference in the game, but ultimately Germany was a better team. They deserved to win.
Yeah, you touched on Musiala. I think that I want to hear from you, from your opinion on what was the most specific thing that you saw limiting the U.S. So Musiala, obviously a game changer, but they changed, from my vantage point, that second half was different, and I think that there were real significant deficiencies from the U.S. that controlled or I'd say changed the complexion of the game. Obviously, you know that Germany has players all over the field. That's a no-brainer. They do that every time they line up. But the U.S., for me, they lacked a couple different things. Did you see anything specifically from them outside of Musa that you already referenced?
Yeah, I thought that they struggled to get Balogun involved in the game. I'm not sure exactly where the creativity was supposed to come from in the second half, but Balogun, he wasn't involved in the game. And Balogun is the type of player to me who he's good enough and strong enough and technical enough to come link play. But in the U.S., with how they play, you need a striker who's going to constantly be fed service. Balls in behind, balls from out wide. I rarely recognize Balogun in the second half. And to me,
to be fair, I didn't recognize him in the first half either. Exactly.
Well, that's my point. And you could see that there were little moments, and I watched when I was watching the game, because I said that he was going to be a big key in these friendlies and see how Greg was going to incorporate him. You see little moments where Balogun, he comes to link play and he'll lay the ball off, and his first movement immediately is to get in behind the back line, in behind the defense. And there are players in our team that I think can find him quickly with passes in between the lines, but for whatever reason, and I think this is a staple of Greg Berhalter teams, we decide to go wide. We don't take that direct option. And I think Balogun, you could tell there was a little frustration there with the amount of times, especially, look, I think Rudiger is pretty athletic, but he is getting up there in age. Hummels, he has no pace. For me, I couldn't figure out why the U.S. wasn't trying to play more balls in behind to Balogun running off the central defense, the back line. So getting him involved, I think, needs to be a much, much bigger part of Greg's game plan. I think that Greg really wants to get the ball wide. I think he wants Christian and Tim Weah to be able to run at opposing fullbacks and get crosses into the box. But to me, it just, after the first 20 minutes of the game, the U.S., they just lacked any killer instinct. They lacked any danger. That, for me, was the thing that I noticed for the most part. I don't know if you noticed that, Dan. I'd like to hear actually your perspective on some things they're missing.
Yeah, so to reference specifically what you're talking about, I think that there's a lot of mouths to feed in the U.S. attack, and I don't think that they've figured that out because Weah, big personality, wants the ball. Balogun obviously switched to the U.S. to get the ball. And then you're talking about the leader of the team in Christian Pulisic playing out wide left, who obviously needs the ball. He needs to be fed. So and we haven't even dropped in, the Blondie in Reyna and what he looks like because he needs the ball. So you got quite a few pieces that I don't think that they've really figured out how they want to run their team and who they're running it through. And I think that there's a piece here where I want to get your guys' perspective on, because I think there's a big elephant in the room that needs to get addressed. One of the things that I saw specifically, though, and this was, I went and saw them play in St. Louis. They played Serbia, right? Montenegro, I think was the team.
I can't remember.
Their last friendly, which there was just no sense of urgency anywhere on the field. And I saw that very, very blatantly obvious in this game, especially on the back line. Guys didn't have that bite. And against a team like Germany, I don't feel like against any team in any international competition, I feel like you have to have some type of sense of urgency. And the way that some of these guys just danced in and around our defenders, I was embarrassed for them. I mean, it did not look good. And you're talking about the cohesion. You're talking about a backline that hasn't played together, and that's real. And those levels of comfort, those relationships, they have to form. And there are definitely levels of understanding that allow a backline to play really well. But I thought across all the lines, there was really a lack of bite within any of our players. And I know that it's a friendly, but this is an opportunity for you to, kind of put a stamp on the rest of the world and say, okay, we can play with Germany. And I think outside of Pulisic's goal, which was really an individual effort, there wasn't much there.
But to your point there, sorry to interrupt you, but it's like, if you're playing a team that is quite clearly on your level or maybe a little bit better than you, because let's be clear, Germany's better. Showed they are a better team right now in this moment in time. It was Nagelsmann's first game, whatever. You have to have guys. It's great to have great soccer players on the field and skillful players with crazy talent and amazing vision for the game. If you don't have a couple grinders that are going to completely change the flow and momentum of the game,
they're earning their minutes, right? They earn the game, and not everyone has to earn the game. Some players, just the game comes to them.
You got to earn the right to play, I think is what you're trying to say. And if you don't have a Tyler Adams on the field, then who is going to be the guy other than maybe a Weston McKennie that's going to get up in someone's face, that's going to put in a tackle, that's going to get a yellow card, whatever it may be, set the tone for, hey, yeah, you guys can try to play beautiful tiki-taka football all over the field against us, but you're not gonna do it without feeling us. You're not gonna do it without getting fouled or breaking up play, right? And so look,
they played on U.S. soil, you couldn't tell outside of the fan base that was there. And that was one of the things that I thought was like one of the most significant glaring omissions of this team, which has been, I think, a question for me because Greg was not that type of guy. Greg had a ton of bite to him as a player, and I feel like the player profile that we have right now within our player pool doesn't have that. And I think I'm glad you referenced Weston McKennie. And Gordo, I want to hear your opinion on this because you've had some pretty, I would say, outsized talents that have been on your team with you, maybe better than the rest of the group. Is Weston McKennie too good for this group? Does he fit within the group? And let me give you a little more context on that. He's playing and has been playing at a very high level now for a while in terms of his club ball. I feel like there's moments, my vantage point, where Weston McKennie does stuff on the field that nobody else in a U.S. uniform can do. And that's either in possession, it's out of possession, it's some of his movement, it's the pockets that he finds. It's pretty incredible. But it's also wildly inconsistent for me as well. Is that a problem within the other 10 players, or is that a problem within Weston McKennie? And would you drop him from your squad?
That's a good question, Gargs. Yeah, I mean, I remember. Yeah, I mean, special players do that. They go find the game and they'll go out of position to do it, right? But I don't think that's a McKennie problem. Unless Greg doesn't want him doing that, but it doesn't look like he's given him those restrictions, right? And he
doesn't have the restrictions. I think that they actually commented on that about Greg being unable to keep Weston further back.
Sure, and so I think that's a balance issue. I think it's the same exact conversation as you guys were just talking about with a Tyler Adams. Let's just use him as an example. You have to have a guy that's going to cover, or two guys that are going to cover and grind if you're going to have a guy and give him the freedom to play outside of the box. And you want that. However, if you got Gio, and then you got McKennie, and then you got Weah, and then you got Pulisic in the midfield, if that's your midfield, right, then who's covering for who? Because they all want to be the guy, to your guys' point. They want to go forward. They want to get the ball. So who's all keeping it in balance? You know, so that's going to be, and I think that's what you're alluding to. It's going to be a really tough, it's just going to be a tough puzzle to fit and to fix and to get all the right pieces in there, because you're not going to be able to have all your sexy guys on the field at once. You can't. You'll be out of balance. On paper, you may win, but in the game, you're going to lose. Remember when Bruce used to put Robbie, Gerard, Ashley Cole, and Nigel all on the same team? What would happen? Yeah, they lost every freaking game. And Gargan and Gordon.
It's a retirement home.
Yeah, and Gargan and Gordon, right, two journeymen, are kicking the shit out of them because we worked harder, you know, and we had a better balance of workers and we stayed in a better shape. So, I mean, that's a piece, and it's a riddle he's got to solve for this team, because if you have all the sexy guys, it's not going to work.
All right, so Dax, do you think this is more on the players, or is this more on Greg? Do the players need to find a bit of that bite, or does Greg need to balance this out? Was Alexi Lalas right in talking about our players now being soft and entitled?
I don't think he's right. No, I think that it's a little bit of both, but it's more so on the players. If you need a coach to motivate you internally, then you're already behind the eight ball. Like, that's just, like, Weston McKennie has that. Tyler Adams has that, right? That's going to come from, like, your midfield. But for me, the bigger issue is what we talked about a little bit, is just finding the right balance. And so you guys always give me shit for hanging on the fence with some of my answers. So I'll go one further. I will tell you the U.S. is in what I want to see as the U.S.'s strongest midfield, if everyone's healthy. I want to see Tyler Adams, Yunus Musa, and Gio Reyna as the U.S.'s midfield. And that's not a slight on Weston McKennie, because I think he's a fantastic player. But I think when it's all said and done, Tyler Adams, if you are going to play against the best teams in the world at the World Cup, you have to have a 6 on the field. Yunus Musa,
I was going to say, you have
Yunus Musa
three
and Weston
clearly
McKennie,
defined profiles there.
Yunus Musa, Weston McKennie aren't that. So to me, you need a 6, you need an 8, and you need a chance creator. You need a 10. Gio Reyna is a 10. He's a better chance creator than Yunus Musa and Weston McKennie. So then it comes down to those two, Weston McKennie and Yunus Musa. And I think the margins are really thin. I think they're both great players. I almost even think that Greg can go matchup based, right? If you're going to be a little bit better and you're going to have a little bit more possession, maybe you want a Weston McKennie on the field, right? You want a Weston McKennie on the field to be getting in the box and cleaning up scraps in and around the box, right? Use his aerial ability on set pieces, right? But if you're going to have to grind a little bit more and you're going to have a guy that's a little bit more structured, you got to have Yunus Moose on the field because I think he's a little bit more comfortable in possession and he will help Tyler Adams a little bit more on the defensive side of the ball in midfield because Weston has admitted it himself. He loves a free roll. He loves to be able to roam and find the game. You can't have two players that do that against the better teams. You just can't, right? You're going to have Gio Reyna doing that. You're going to have Christian Pulisic doing that. You can't have too many of those guys. So for me, I think Greg would go Tyler, Weston, and Gio. I think that he would bench Yunus. But for me, the strongest midfield we have, if everyone's fit and it's all said and done, Tyler, Yunus, Gio Reyna is the midfield that I would like to see against top competition.
Who's your backup for Tyler?
That's a question that you have to answer.
We've seen a massive hole.
Yeah, you have to answer that question in the next 3 years. You got 3 years to figure it out.
Yeah,
I don't know.
That's pretty scary. It is. I think that I'm co-signing that. I think as fun as it is to watch Weston, I don't think that he fits. I just don't think it doesn't make enough sense for me to keep him on the field. And I also question why Gio hasn't been put in the 10 in every minute available. Because we don't have another profile like him. Correct. And when you're playing these high level games, it's good to have a bunch of grinders on the field, but you need a difference maker in the middle of the field. You need a guy who sees the game and has vision that's a little bit different, right? You need a Landon, you need a John O'Brien, you need a Claudio Reyna, you need someone that is going to bring the game to life when you have moments where maybe you don't have a lot of possession, right? And I think against the best teams, we've seen the U.S., they don't tend to have a ton of possession, even though that's how Greg wants us to play. I just don't think we're quite at the level yet of a world-class team to be able to dictate the game with possession. So you need to take advantage of it. A guy that I know that you have been close to in your life and on and off the field, Dax, and Michael Bradley, and kind of what that relationship kind of growing up alongside of him in a couple different places, announced his retirement. What was the first word that came to your mind when you saw that?
Legend. Because he is. Okay. We throw that word around a lot, talking about a lot of players. And I see it, and I chuckle at the amount of times we see the word legend thrown around. But Michael Bradley, that is exactly what came to my mind, is legend. And also a little bit of surprise. I was a little shocked. So 2 words, legend and shocked, because he had a really, really difficult season. He was injured for the majority of the season. He had a really bad hamstring injury. I think he had to get surgery. He just got fit and has been playing the last couple of games, but it's the worst, I think one of the worst seasons in Toronto FC history. And we're talking about a team that, like, in the beginning of their tenure
has gone through some bad years.
And you guys know, you were both there. Gordo was fighting people. You guys were terrible. Like that, there was some really bad TFC teams.
We didn't have great records up in Toronto, but we were far from the worst in Toronto. Let's be perfectly clear about that.
And so for me, I look at his situation and I think he's had such a decorated, fantastic career. Surely, especially with the injury and how bad their season's been and all the dysfunction and turmoil and negative things, surely he'll want to play another season just to maybe, come off the bench, right? Be an emotional leader. Maybe you can't play every minute of every game. Maybe he's more of a bench guy, whatever. But surely they will right that ship. You know what I mean? And he'll give it one more go. But to end his career with the season that they just had, it just shocked me a little bit. I didn't think that that's something that he would do, but who knows what the conversations were internally with him. Maybe it was, hey, Michael, we don't want you to go anywhere else. You have a job waiting for you lined up, but we need you to retire. Whatever it is, I'm not sure what the conversation was like. But for me, I've known Michael since we were 15 years old. I'll try to keep this quick. I know it's, I won't be able to. We were in residency together, played on the under-17 national team together, and to see the career trajectory that he's had is nothing short of incredible and unbelievable. Because when we were younger, he didn't stand out. He was not a standout player. He was a good player who had quality.
He's a 6. Sixes don't often stand out.
That's fair, and that hurts. But at the end of the day, I do think that Michael, when he turned pro, I don't think anyone that played with him in residency could have foreseen how good of a player he would turn himself into. And all the crap about Bob and nepotism, giving him all these chances, blah, 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 blah. Okay, fine. You what?
That's true.
That's true. Bob got his foot in the door. But Michael Bradley became so much more than that. And he became so much more than just a player who was handed these opportunities because his dad was a coach. I just fundamentally don't believe that.
Gordo, sorry, Dax, I think you're right.
And also, I need to say one more thing before you interrupt me.
No, go. Finish.
The fact that a lot of fans, and I understand why this happened, but I think it's nonsense. Why specifically Michael and Josie got absolutely destroyed for years after we didn't qualify for the World Cup in 2018 was extremely unnecessary. Because yes, you want to boo them every now and then for us not making the World Cup because they were team leaders and you want to show them your disgust, whatever, that's fine. But to have it happen at every stadium they went to for months afterward, and not just months afterward, even the next year, going into the next year and giving them like just so much vitriol, negative about their families, about their careers, just for the fact that we failed as a nation and we failed as a team. I was there. I was a part of that, right?
Yep.
To make it to the World Cup. I thought that was insanely short-sighted and uncalled for and unnecessary. And yes, I think Michael handled it like a pro, like he always did, but the blame, there was plenty of blame to go around. It wasn't just his fault or Josie's fault. So I needed to say my piece.
Absolutely. I think that's a fair piece. I was going to throw this to Gordo. The first word that you referenced, legend, for me is appropriate. Gordo, I wanted to ask you why Michael Bradley doesn't get that credit.
Yeah, probably in large part just because of what Dax said. Not making the World Cup. I think people have lost sight of what really happened with his career. I think they just see the back half and him kind of in his aging process, right? It was we don't make the World Cup, and then he starts to Toronto starts to Gio leaves. They're not as good anymore. His career starts to go on a natural decline because of his age, and people kind of choose to remember him in that light. I don't. I haven't forgot what he did for us, and so what came to mind for me was Captain America. I think you add him to the shrine with the rest of the Captain Americas, the Carlos Bocanegras, the Claudio Reynas, the Landon Donovans, the Clint Dempseys, and the Michael Bradleys. He deserves to be up there. He carried the torch. Yeah, DeMarcus Beasley's, right? And I don't want to leave anybody out on that. And there's a few, right? But he carried the torch for us, and he did a really good job. You remember him when we were battling Mexico. He scores that banger. That was like the height, man. And
from the midfield, just picked his head up and popped that. That was incredible. I mean, talk about iconic goals. I think there's two iconic goals in my brain in the history of U.S. men's soccer, and it's Landon Donovan's at the World Cup, and it's Michael Bradley's in Azteca. Those two goals.
I was there in person for that game. It was the only World Cup qualifier, the only time I had been to Azteca. And on the bench, we were stunned, could not even fathom what we had just seen and the audacity that Michael had to try that. And the way he struck it, the confidence that he played with.
Everything about it.
Every single
thing about it.
Yeah.
The fact that he picked his head up, the fact that he read the pass, the fact that he actually feathered that in, everything was perfect. Is he in the Mount Rushmore of U.S. soccer men's national team players?
For me, no, but he's close.
I wouldn't put him in the Mount Rushmore, but yeah, that's not a knock on him. I don't know if he is. I think if we do a Mount Rushmore A and a Mount Rushmore B, he's in Mount Rushmore B. So I'm going to put him in A, but I'm putting him as a top 8 U.S. men's national team player of all time. And he was he was one of the first ones besides a goalie to go over to Europe and actually do it
and have a real career.
He was a trailblazer.
He's starting for Roma, and then we're like, oh wait, he's not on the team. He's starting for Roma. Yeah.
He was Christian Pulisic before Pulisic went to Dortmund. He did all that.
And this was
so he was doing it.
This was also pre all of the coverage in Europe. Michael Bradley was doing this under the radar when Americans weren't celebrating. No. Americans are almost embraced at this point in, we just unearthed our own American. When that was not the case, man. Michael Bradley walked into Italy and broke doors down from a staying perspective. Players had obviously gone there in the past, pre him, but nobody had did what he did.
Right.
Correct.
And
Yeah,
the
so that's
success
why-
that he had was very, very impressive.
I love what Gordo said. People, to me, are choosing to remember Michael in his latter years of his career when he did slow down. I think he did lose his legs a little bit. And I think that they only want to remember the failure of not making the 2018 World Cup, when in reality, if you look at him at his height, he was a written in pen starter for the U.S. men's national team, for multiple teams in Europe, and for a Toronto FC team that should be considered one of the greatest teams to ever play in Major League Soccer history. So
Has to be.
you take all that and you say, that is one of the most impressive resumes in careers that an American has ever had, and that's how he should. That's how he should be remembered.
Dude, his legs ran out on him because he's one of the only American players of all time that had similar numbers to some of the European greats, like the 600, 700, 800 games played under their belt.
Yep.
It's astounding what he did, and he does not get love. He gets vitriol, which is it's insane. And I also think that it's really disappointing for a guy that has made such an impact on U.S. soccer, has had worn the armband, has carried our country's soccer
And
for
let's not
large
forget,
portions.
He was not afraid to answer really difficult questions and make statements during really difficult times in the U.S. And I'm talking about politically. I'm talking about off the field stuff, right? He didn't hide from any of that. He stood up and he was the leader that represented the team and the team's views for the most part. And so for me, there's nothing but respect and admiration for everything he accomplished in his career. I have zero doubt in my mind that he's going to become a coach, and a great coach at that.
I got Landon, Clint, Bees, and Bradley. I think are my four. And I'd like to do a little bit more recon and research before I put that in pen, but he's in there.
No love for the keepers, huh? Wow, Dan, you heard it here first on Journeymen. Dan Gargan hates goalkeepers.
I'm okay with that.
I'm okay with that.
No, come on now. I love goalkeepers, but they're not field players.
That's true. That's true. Let's be real.
So USA Ghana. Are we interested?
I'm going, baby.
I'll tell you what I'm watching.
Date night with the wife. I'm taking her. She probably hates me.
Win game number 2 in Philadelphia. You're going date night. That'll be fun. What would the atmosphere be like there?
Hard to say, man. Hard to say. Honestly, I don't know what the tickets sold numbers are, but if it's anything like a Nashville SC game, it's going to be electric. But it's
does US win?
Yes, the US will win. The US will win this game.
Gordo?
Ghana's tough, man. I think Ghana is tough, dude. We have not had the most success.
We don't.
World Cup.
We don't match up well with them.
No. Yeah, I think because it's a friendly, I think, Ghanans doing Ghanan things. We might be able to catch them, outside of a World Cup, I'm looking forward to it, man. I'm looking forward to watching them. I'll pop in and out with your Phillies. But want to see some improvement from the Germany game.
Yeah, I can co-sign that. Let's wrap this up with a little decision day talk. I think we're going to do next week's episode. We've touched a bunch. Next week's episode will be on the actual playoff positions, but there's still a lot to play for. A lot of interesting games. Dax, you're in one of those games against your old squad. What are you expecting from Red Bull?
I'm sad that you used those words as an intro, because while yes, I am in this game from a team perspective, I am personally out of this game because I got a really harsh yellow card given to me kind of later on in the New England game, and I am suspended on yellow card accumulation. I was very close to making it the whole season without being suspended, but alas, a journeyman, we get yellows. We pick up yellows like we like candy. It is what it is.
That's part of the MO.
We have Alan Gordon, who has the most yellows or fouls per minute of any player in MLS history. So that was an ode to him. But yeah, I expect Red Bull to fight.
As a badge of honor.
Yeah, I do. I expect Red Bull to be fighting for their lives because they are. They have to, depending on other results, of course, they can get in, I think, with a draw, but I'm pretty sure they need a win. So we are going for it full bore because we can still move up in the standings. We have a chance to, I think, get all the way up to 5th, pending other results. So we're 5th, 6th, or 7th. But Red Bull, they have to win. And it's been a bad, let's call it what it is. It's been a bad season for New York Red Bulls. This is a team who I think has been a little bit on a downward trajectory for the last 4 or 5 years. Obviously, they've had a little bit of... They were still good after I left. I think it's been enough time now where they've been able to move on. But in terms of the standard that you just associate with Red Bull, I think because Seattle missed the playoffs last year, Red Bull was actually the team that had made the playoffs the most consecutively. I think it was like 12 or 13 years in a row. So, it's obviously you don't base success off playoff appearances, but in terms of consistency, they've been consistently there, challenging. So I think that it's going to be one of the hardest games that we play all season against Red Bull because you know how they play. They're going to run, they're going to fight, they're going to scrap for everything. It's going to be a lot of duels, second balls, but look, we have a lot of former Red Bulls on our team, right? Not just myself. You got Sean Davis, Alex Mawil. So there's plenty to play for. It's going to be an exciting game. It's going to be a good game. I said this to our group before the Philly game. When the weather gets cold, that's when the games matter and they take on more importance, and you really see the players that you have in your locker room who's going to step up when the games are very important. And these are important games. When the weather's cold, you see who wants to step up and take it on themselves to win games for your team. So I'm looking forward to watching it. I'm sad I won't be a part of it in terms of being on the field, but I think it'll be a really good game. And you know what? There's a little part of me that, sure, I'll always have a special place in my heart for Red Bull, but right now, I want to kill them, man. I want to win the game, and I don't want to have to see them in the playoffs.
Dax is bleeding yellow. That's what everybody in Nashville wants to hear, and I can understand that. I can sympathize that. Gordo, you got a big one in Denver this weekend as well. Salt Lake Rocky Mountain Cup in Colorado against the Dead Rapids. What are you predicting?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go check that one out live. Why
not,
boy?
Yes.
Yeah, I think I might take the kids down there, depending on if I can get free tickets or not. So I'll hit up all my usual
Gordo,
people.
let me ask you a more specific question. Do you think that there's more pressure on Salt Lake to win the game because A, Colorado is so bad and is the worst team in the West, and B, because it is for a top 4 position, and obviously, you know how it goes. You want to win games going into the playoffs. You want momentum. Do you think that this would affect them mentally if they weren't able to secure that position against a team like Colorado?
Just to clarify, Salt Lake, with a win and help, can move up to 3rd. So they could host a playoff game.
Sure. Yeah, all the pressure is with Salt Lake, and it's actually a tough matchup for decision day. Having these implications, you can move up. Get a home game first round, Gargs. Is that right? 3rd place gets a first round.
Yep.
Home. So, and it's against a rival.
Best of 3 series. You could potentially host 2 playoff games.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't see anybody else that's playing their rival. So this is a tough one. Colorado's got contracts, pride, and the rivalry to play for. So they do have some skin in the game. There's going to be a lot of guys that are looking for new contracts after a season like that. So they're going to come out firing. They want to end. There's nothing to lose for them. If I'm their coach, if I'm the interim, I'm saying there's 0 to lose. We either lose this game 4-0 or we win 4-0. Let's throw everything at them.
I love it. And that's what you tell your daughter's team, huh? That's what you tell your kids.
Well, we don't lose. I just say don't stop scoring. Put your foot on their throats. I don't care I don't care if they're crying, you keep scoring. So listen, I want Pablo to do well. We all love Pablo. He's a friend of the pod. And so I'm going to go there rooting for them. But I think it's going to be a really tough game for him to come out with 3 points. I really do.
Salt Lake, also a number of injuries, and Chucho's out. They're the guy that kind of flipped the script for them and changed their complexion. But Salt Lake's got a lot of players that are performing under Pablo. Little nugget for you guys. Salt Lake, only Western Conference club that has made the playoffs the last 3 years. Pretty impressive for Pablo Mastroeni and Real Salt Lake.
Wow.
That's wild.
That is a wild stat. I'm watching Minnesota, Kansas City. So still a couple teams that are out there for those last couple spots in the Western Conference. I'll tell you what, man. I just have a weird special place in my heart for Minnesota
Why?
because of
I knew you were going to say that.
dude, because of Reynoso.
I do too, though.
He's like my spirit animal. If I could come back as any other player, it would be him. He's unbelievable.
I have the same feeling, dude. I don't know why I like them. I don't know why. I was saying why because I feel it too. Why?
I don't know. I can't pinpoint it outside of. Well, there are a fair amount of things. I love their stadium. I love their environment. Their fans they're cool. They got a decent team. They just picked up Pookie, which I like. I like that signing, and I love Reynoso. And I think that it will tell us a lot about their team if they're able to move on from Heath, who has been there for forever.
That's where I was going to go with that.
And perform. If
what
they
an
can
interesting
perform,
dynamic with Adrian Heath being fired and them. If they sneak into the playoffs, like, would that be like the fired coach pop? Because everyone was like, well, why wouldn't you just wait till the end of the season to fire him? Well, if they make the playoffs, this is why.
Yep.
Dude, this is exactly the reason why, right? And also, like, you know, you go back to some of the results that they've had. You go back to, like, you know, should we have done this earlier? There's quite a few little things that you can kind of point to, but man, if they made some noise in the playoffs, they have some of the pieces that could actually do that. And they have a goal scorer. We've talked about this. They have a number 10. They have a playmaker. And they're playing against Kansas City, which is also in a pretty weird position within the league and within their kind of maturation process of what ultimately happens with them and with Peter. Does a change happen in the offseason? There's a lot of interesting dynamics that can happen in this game. And I don't know. I'm betting. Man, I don't know who I'm betting. Actually, I don't know.
Let's just put it
take?
this way. I think who's home? Is Minnesota at home?
That's a good question.
I'll tell you right now. Fop Mob. Shout out Fop Mob. Sporting Kansas City at home.
In KC. I really like Flangwane, who's also a player. That was a great signing for them. Have you played against him, Dax?
I have. He's electric.
Dude, he's handful.
Good. Yeah.
A little guy named Allen is going to come up big in that game. He's not really that little, but he's going to come up big in that game.
He's going to come up big in that game.
We'll
think,
see. You know what's crazy?
You're going to earn it. They're going to earn it either way because walking into KC and getting a result is not easy.
It's not, but I don't think it's as hard as it has been in the past. Nashville SC, we weren't in the best form in the world. Strolled in there and got a nice little 3-0 dub no more than a few weeks ago. So I do have to say the allure of Sporting Kansas City's home field advantage is a little bit, it's wearing off a little bit. And for whatever reason, Minnesota United, they've been terrible at home. When they play at home, they've been awful.
They're the best road team in the league, I think.
They've been pretty good on the road, so I don't know, man. I'm thinking Minnesota's going to pull it out as long as Reynoso's fit and healthy. He is usually the best player on the field. He'll pull some magic out of a hat.
Dude, another guy that flies under the radar because he's I think he's a supplemental player or is in a supplemental spot. This dude I saw play. I called a couple of their games. DJ Taylor. Do you know that name, Dax?
Yep.
Really nice little player, man.
He got sent off. He got sent off against us in Leagues Cup. Just FYI.
Well, those things happen, don't
happens.
they, Mr. Yellow Card?
They sure do. They sure do.
Mr. Suspension. But I do like him. He matched up a couple different places on the field. They used him. They moved him around, and he did well. He's a player to watch, I think, moving forward in this league. Either way, Decision Day will be fun. Are you guys fans of Decision Day or not?
I was just thinking in my head, like, you know what? First of all, I like the fact that all the games kick off at the same time in the East and then a little bit later in the West. I think that's fair. I think that's what most leagues do around the world for their last match day. But you know what? I hate the extended playoff field because I think it rewards teams that don't have great years. But this is exactly what MLS wanted, and this is exactly what we are getting. Multiple teams have the chance to sneak into the playoffs on the last day of the season. And there's 4 or 5 teams in each conference who all think that they have something to play for, which is a playoff spot or a home game or seeding, right? And this is what MLS wants. It drums up a lot of interest, and honestly, it'll make the games, I think, really exciting. So not a fan of the extended playoff field, but again, this is what MLS wants, and I'm excited to see how it shakes out.
Gordo, fan?
Huge fan. Huge fan.
Huge fan.
Yeah, I like it. I think it adds a buzz. I'm with Dax. I wish less teams made the playoffs. 100%. I think 60+% of teams make the MLS playoffs. That's not okay. I think it's got to be drastically reduced.
And
I think that's.
And your boy,
when they add
boys,
another 10 clubs and they leave it at 18 teams, we'll be all right. We'll fly right under that.
Right. We got to just wait for that. But I mean, I think that's one of the allures of Major League Baseball. There's not a lot of teams that make it. And then it's like, you really got to earn it, right? So I'd like to see that change. But as far as everybody playing for something, I like that.
Except for Gargs' team that he's repping right now, unfortunately.
Yeah. That would be a good.
Rest in peace, the
it's
LA
a
Galaxy.
nice looking jersey, though. I gotta say,
2023.
nice looking jersey, though.
It is. They did well with this one, but they'll be back. They'll be back next year. All right, fellow journeymen. Appreciate you tuning in. Hey, listen, if you guys are enjoying the pod, spread the good news. Tell a buddy about it. Tell a friend. Follow us. Share it. Do what you do, but. We appreciate it. We appreciate the support, and we enjoy doing it. We're having fun. So if you guys are tuning in, keep doing it and keep spreading the word.